The webinar will take about 45 minutes today. I'm going to introduce Jim Hackenberg, the developer of the Orange Whip, and then he's going to introduce Brandi at the end. Brandi and Jim are going to do a little quick live demo of some drills that you can do with to keep your golf swing in shape for the season. And they'll also do some Q&A for about 10 minutes. If you notice in your dashboard, there's some handouts. There's a couple from us at Orange Whip, and there's one from Brandi as well there. The webinar will be recorded, and if you registered, you will receive an email tomorrow with that recording, and we'll also post that on YouTube and social media. And we also have a survey that you'll get emailed right after the webinar, so please take a few minutes. It always helps us with improving our webinars as we have more of these. I'm going to turn it over to Jim Hackenberg, and he's going to speak a little bit, then introduce Brandi. So Jim, take it away.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange webinar series. You know, as golfers, we all strive to reach the next level. That level could be to play golf with a group of players better than yourself, or that next level could be competing in a tournament. A tournament could be a club championship, a local junior or amateur event, or even trying to qualify for a national event. Bringing your game to the next level requires effort, commitment, and desire. My own experience in trying to get to that next level required a change in my lifestyle. Having fun with my friends became much less important, and working on my game became much more of a reliable way for success. So what happened to me, I was a high school golfer, just a medium player. I probably averaged 81 when I was playing. In the state high school tournament, I shot 71 to take the lead in the state tournament. And I got my name in the paper, and it was at that moment I knew I wanted to pursue golf and I wanted to go to a higher level with it. But I had to change some things about how I lived. So after high school, I moved to Arizona, and I worked on my game, and I got residency in Arizona, and I entered Arizona State University. I was a walk-on to the Arizona State golf team the same year that Phil Mickelson was a freshman. So I got to play golf with Phil for a year and learn about how a guy like that played golf. I learned, though, after playing there 1 year that I wasn't breaking into their top 5, so I may have dove in a little far. I wasn't quite at that level. So I transferred to Oregon State, and I ended up playing 3 years at Oregon State, graduated. I played in all the Pac-10 events, so I had a great experience. After college, I wanted to try the mini tours. So I played for probably 5-6 years, traveling all over the country, playing mini tour events. But I had minimal success, and eventually I needed money. I needed an income. So I started working as a golf professional. I worked in the shop, I worked in the bag room, and I did a lot of teaching. Well, I did this for many years and fell more in love with golf, but I wanted to pursue it further. I wanted to see what levels I could take it to. Then I had my big break. A good friend of mine qualified for the PGA Tour, and he asked me to caddy for him. So I was able to caddy on the tour for 3 seasons, and I was able to watch the best players every day swing. And I started to notice all these guys swing in perfect rhythm, and they're always in balance. So I started to see a concept. I started to see a rhythm that I thought I could share with my students as a teacher. So my pursuit of reaching the next level of golf led me to this Orange Whip concept and the product of the Orange Whip. So all of these previous experiences and these connections I was making were great networking for when I started this business. So I was able to jump into the Orange Whip business with already a pretty good field of people to connect with. So going through my life, it's pretty obvious that my path was not a typical or an easy path to get to where I got to today. You could almost relate it to diving into a swimming pool, but you're not able to swim. It would have been a lot better had I had a plan of action and a direction that I could have followed, rather than just hopefully guessing at what I was going to do next. Well, fortunately today we have a great guest. Brandi Jackson is here to join us, and she's going to talk about taking our games to the next level. Now, Brandi is from right here in the upstate. She played for Furman. She's an All-American. She's also was the U.S. Amateur runner-up, and that's a fabulous situation there. She played 8 years on the LPGA and the Symetra Tour. But Brandi has now founded Brandi Jackson Golf, and she is here to help us not only take our game to the next level, but also to help young players try to decide if they're able to play college golf and how to make that connection. I sure wish I would have known a Brandi Jackson when I was a kid, because it would have provided me a pathway. But let me have Brandi take over, and she's going to share with you some thoughts and ideas on what you can do to get to that next level. Brandi, welcome.
Thanks, Jim, for having me, and thanks everybody for joining. I am excited to share some of what I do with players. I do typically work mostly with junior golfers, but the more I've kind of seen things both within my own life transition and just some of the things that I do. I get a lot of adults and instructors and things who say, a lot of what I do with the players tends to kind of help them with their own games, both on and off the golf course. So we thought, joining up Brandi Jackson Golf with Orange Whip might be able to share some of that knowledge, not just on the recruiting side of things, but also the total game side of things. So gonna take you through a few, there we go. Gonna take you through a few different topics here that I just, I don't work a ton one-on-one. A lot of my players are remote. So a lot of times I'm just trying to help them from a remote perspective, or hopefully getting them with an instructor who's going to help them with some of this. But these are just some of the things that I help players, kind of tackle in the process, their games, and really a lot of it's even the off-course side of things, with time management and discipline, and how can they start figuring out what it is they really want out of this whole process, and how can they make their priorities and their time spent to help them get where they want with their golf games, or whatever it might be that they're trying to pursue. So these are the 4 topics we're going to go through. I'm going to touch on each of them for a few minutes, and then Jim and I are going to do a little demonstration for you, and then let you ask some questions and have us answer. So the first one, and this is actually the handout that came with it. It's a very simple, basic handout. Tried to keep it very clean, but it's asking you to write down your 3 outcome goals. If you've seen a lot, or if you follow different people out there, there's a lot of different philosophies behind goal setting. I think everybody kind of has their own philosophy. I do, while some people talk about burn your goals and don't keep up with, what it is, the big picture. I think it's still very important to keep up with what that outcome is that you want, just to keep you motivated. So on that sheet that you have, it's got room where you can put like 3 outcome goals that you might want. These are the big picture things, maybe breaking 80, winning a tournament. It might be if with working out, you want to get stronger. It might be that, you want to increase your income at work, whatever that might be. Those are what you look at as the outcome goals. But at the end of the day, a lot of those outcome goals only have so much control over them. For me, when I was little, I wanted to play college golf. I actually wanted to play at Furman from the time I was probably 9 years old, and I wanted to be a professional golfer. And while from all those, some of those accolades that I have, it looked like I had a lot of success, I can kind of say a lot of it was based off of luck. I was a lot like Jim and just kind of went in and didn't really have a big plan for what I was doing. And some of those things just kind of happened a little bit more just out of talent. And I really wish I'd had a plan. I had the goal, but I didn't have a plan. So a lot of what I didn't have and didn't do through my golf career is what I really enjoy doing and helping players with these days. So it's outcome goals are great. Those dreams, those big dreams that you have are great, but you really have to set a plan for how you want to achieve those. So that's what we're going to get into. But again, just a little bit about the outcome goals. It's scores a lot of times are what somebody's outcome goal is, and how many times you're getting ready to finish that last hole and you need to par it, and you make a triple, just knowing that you needed to just make a par to make to break 80 for the first time, or break 70 for the first time, or whatever that might be. So we're gonna talk a little bit more. Here's some examples of those outcome goals that we talked about. Shooting a certain score or winning a tournament. As you can tell, these are all outcome based. They are bigger, broader type of goals. Obviously, when working with junior players, a lot of my players' goals are going to a particular school, maybe playing in a particular Division I or a ranking of a school or something. That's a lot of the goals that I have with the players. So from there, we then break it down into a plan. Is that realistic? Do we have the timelines? What do you need to be doing to get there? It may be losing weight. It may be wanting a higher salary. A lot of different ways that you could have those outcome goals, which are great. But if you don't have a plan for it, then there's only so much you can do. Another thing about those outcome goals, and we're getting into more specific, is and the more specific you are with things, the more likely that you're going to be able to achieve it. And that's where you start to break it down into the process goals, is learning how to be more specific and how to really get a plan of action for what it is you want to do, and not just generalizing, I want to do something in a broad sense. You really want to make sure, another big thing about goals is making sure something you really want. It's not just something that you think is a good goal. I deal with this with a lot of the players. I get them out on the golf course a lot of times away from their parents just to make sure that this is something they really want, and it's not just it is their parents that want it. And there's a thin line there between, you know, parents seeing the bigger picture and sometimes it just being the kids are being lazy and just don't want to work. So it's trying to find that balance of where is that inner drive coming from, and can we maybe get that out a little bit, or is it really just not the true desire behind them to want to play college golf or get better or whatever that might be. So same thing with goals. It's really got to be about what you want and what it is that, you know, the why behind all of that. Another thing is writing them down. That's kind of what that handout's for. And I'm big on writing things down. When I take notes, when I'm planning stuff, when for workouts, you're going to see a picture here. I do a lot of working out, and a lot of this that I do and talk about goals and process, I put into play with my own training schedules that I do. And I love writing stuff down. We keep things in an app, but nothing beats just writing something down to remind yourself of what it is that you want to do. You know, put it somewhere where you can see it. Sometimes just putting a picture or something that reminds you of what it is that you're working towards. Again, just having it visual and just something besides just saying it just adds that extra little element there. With that, you can write down why it's important. Again, talking about the why behind, you know, what that goal is that you might have in mind. You know, so many different goals that you all might have. You know, we've got, I know, a variety of players, parents, instructors, you know, different variety of people on this call. So there could be just a ton of different types of goals that you may have, again, within your game of golf, within the broad picture, again, of playing college golf. You know, maybe it's something more work related or fitness related or whatever that might be. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how to create that game plan. These are just a few little ideas here of the actual things in action and doing them. And actually, you know, the fitness side, the drill side of things, you know, making your practice on the range a little bit more effective. So we're talking a little bit about taking that outcome goal and then creating the process goals and a game plan for that. So the process goals are more about the actionable things that you can do. It's things that you can do in the present that you can do, and you can see the results and you can focus on right now. Those outcome goals are great, but most of those are going to be 6 months, a year, you know, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And it's kind of hard to really stay focused on that outcome if there's nothing that you're seeing what you can do every day. So you really want to set your goals based off of what you need to be doing now. And you'll see that on the handout. It has you break it down. So you've got that outcome goal, and it asks you to break it down into what's 2 process goals that you can do within that. I'll give you an example of some of these here in a minute if you're kind of stumped on what that might be. And then even within that, you can break it down even the smaller you get it into, and the more actions and tasks that you can do that you can hold yourself accountable for, the more likely you're going to reach that outcome goal. If you focus on that process and not so much the outcome, you're going to be able to see those results, and the outcome will eventually take care of itself if you commit to working on the process every day. So you really want to stay focused on what you can do in the present to reach what you want to do in the future. So this is a really good example, just one section of, you know, how you could do some goals. An example of a good game plan. Say you want to break 80 in 6 months. That's kind of your outcome. Well, part of that one process goal might be, all right, I'm going to practice on the range for 6 hours a week. Obviously, we've got junior players who probably need to be practicing 12 hours a week on the range. I know some who have jobs and it's not a full-time thing. 6 hours may be good, but let's say that's what you set as your process goal is, I'm going to start on the range for 6 hours a week, starting with a time goal. Well, then how can you break that down into what are you going to do during that hour and a half maybe that you're going to have on Monday at the range? So the first thing is maybe you're going to say you're going to spend 15 minutes on balance and tempo work. We're going to show you some of these drills actually using the orange whip is a great way to work on balance and tempo. You get some examples here. So you know, maybe give yourself 2 or 3 things you could do, and you're going to do that for 15 minutes. Then maybe you're going to spend 30 minutes working on your swing mechanic work, whatever. If you've got an instructor who's got you working on some swing changes or tweaking some things, maybe say you're going to spend 30 minutes on that. And then maybe 40 minutes on a more kind of performance-based drill. I have a lot of my girls, part of what I do is just give them every month about 8 or 10 just drills that they can take at their own pace and their own level of what they need. And one of them is something like this, where they have to they create an imaginary fairway on the range, and they have to hit a driver, then a 5-iron on a green, then a driver, and an 8-iron. And you know, they do that until they get all 4 in a row before they finish that day. So that's more of a performance-based drill. So just a way you can really break it down into even more simple task for those process goals that hopefully will then help you with the outcome goal. Obviously, there's a lot more Process goals, here's some examples of ones. I mean, hours of things each week is kind of a start, but as we all know, quality is much more important than quantity usually. So it's how is that then going to become quality? Your level of commitment and purpose during each practice session. Again, more of the quality side of things. Mental game exercises, eating habits, keeping up with your stats, and maybe you need to go get lessons, read a mental book. These are all different kinds of process goals that you can have. Just examples of those actual action steps that you can take to help you reach whatever the outcome goal might be. The next part is tracking your progress. And as I mentioned, like I said, I like to write down. I don't do it as much because I have a trainer now that actually plugs in what I'm going to do. So for me, I have these outcome goals. I've told him things I want to work on, and he then breaks it down into little tiny things that I need to be doing to reach these outcome goals that I have within my training. So I actually don't write as much down, but I keep track of it in a really good app, and it's because somebody's kind of laying it out for me now, which is awesome. But this tracking progress, like I said, really goes hand in hand with setting your goals. It's what allows you to track those process goals and help you keep track of what you're doing. Are you getting better day in and day out? Again, it's easy to see the big picture, but when you can see yourself improving day by day, it just builds confidence, and it's just what's going to allow you to take your game to that next level, and not just keep having to put pressure on every time you get on the golf course, and all of a sudden that pressure's on and you just don't play as well, thinking that you're not really getting better. You can see on a Monday afternoon that you complete a drill that you weren't able to do the week before, and you get it on that Monday afternoon. Say it's 5 out of 5 into a target circle, and you worked on it all the last week and you couldn't get in, and finally you're able to get those 5 out of 5. That starts to build confidence, and when you can track it and keep up with that, then you're able to see those results on a day in and day out basis. So talk a little bit. It's one of my favorite quotes. There's a couple different ways of this, but what is not measured cannot be improved. So when you do keep track of stuff, you know how to improve it. And again, little bitty things of just showing little improvement. I like to use a lot of examples. I don't play a lot of golf anymore, so I don't get to use as many examples from a golf perspective. I do with the players that I work with. But for me, like I said, from a training perspective, we track. I do a workout, work on some things specific to whatever, maybe was a weakness within that workout that I didn't do as good as I'd like. And 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, I'll do that workout again, and I'll know what the goal was. And it makes it so much better to go into that workout knowing, I knew what I did before, and I see whether I improved or not. And if maybe I didn't improve, then it's kind of back to the drawing board of what can I do different. And then we test it again. Sometimes I don't always like the repeat workouts, which I have one on Saturday that I'm not looking forward to. But it's great because I know where I was back in September when I did it. So we've been working on things. So now I get a chance this Saturday to see whether I improved. And I know the process since then has been, to help me improve some of those different skills that I'm going to need. So really important from a golf perspective, from a business perspective, just from anything, just tracking what you're doing. Obviously, keeping track with your practice time is great. Like I said, I think everybody gets so wrapped up in tournaments and keeping track of their stats and all that, but they just sometimes forget about their day in and day out practice time. And one of the best things about college golf is when you get a really good coach, a lot of times you're going to track a lot of this stuff day in and day out at practice. Some coaches have drills that you do almost every day that you keep track of what you did one week. And are you improving? Phil Mickelson was one. He got up to like 100, and he did something out of a bunker. I remember seeing this where he had this one bunker shot at one of his home courses, I guess, and he'd go out there and try to see how many in a row he could get inside of 4 feet, and he could do like 100 of it. So the next time he was going to try to beat it by 1. So those are ways of tracking your practice time and just keeping up. So one example, I love target circles. I'll give you a couple of the target circles that I like using, but it's just a good way, again, of just setting some kind of parameter for what you're doing. But maybe you set a goal for getting 3 out of 5 into the target circle. Keep up with how many times it takes you to do it. Maybe it takes you 8 times to do it the first time, and then maybe the next week you come back and it only takes you 4 times to get in it. And then maybe you get kind of good at that, then you can set it and move it up to 4 out of 5 into that target circle. Then eventually you're able to get 5 out of 5, being able to chip it in that target circle. And this is what it's about with tracking your progress and setting those process goals and really making good use of your practice time, which is so, so important for helping you get to that next level, whatever that level may be within your golf game especially. Another good quote, and I love this. Like I said, I have players who come to me just throughout the year, and I put them through some different drills and set up some of the things that they say they're struggling with. Great example I had was it was a boy, came in, probably been 3 or 4 years ago, and he was struggling with 3-foot putt. So we'd start him at 9 feet, and he'd have to make a 9, a 6, and then a 3-footer or something like that. And every time he'd get back to that 3-footer, he'd miss it, and he just kept getting frustrated. And that to me was what I love to see, because if there's no struggle, then there's no progress. And if you're not finding ways within your practice to really kind of struggle and get frustrated with what you're doing, then you're probably only getting so much better with it. Because we all know when you get on the golf course, it's going to be a struggle at times, and you're going to get frustrated because all of a sudden the fairway gets smaller, that out of bounds or those hazards or whatever there might be all of a sudden are there that's not there during your practice. That 3-foot putt that on the putting green didn't mean something last Monday, now all of a sudden means something. So when you can create some kind of struggle, I remember a player, I think it was the former Kentucky coach, said that she'd have girls come in who were really, really hard workers, and then they'd find out after just an hour and a half of practice what it felt like to have true practice, because their brains would just be tired from the frustration and the struggle of trying to get through what it was that they were, had set for that day. They forgot, or they finally realized what it was like to really get quality practice and kind of get that feeling of what it's like on the golf course during your practice. My coach, who I had at Furman, he's now at Alabama. He makes a comment. He was one of the interviews they did at Nationals last year, maybe. He said he tries to make practice so hard that playing in the tournament seems easy. So really some good things there, just learning how to make that practice time a little bit more effective. This is something I don't do as much with this. A lot of times my goal is to try to help players get with instructors who really will help them with their stats and help them break it down. I kept up with my stats when I played, but it was very general, especially back then. You scribble down fairway, green, bunker, up and down. Obviously now with technology, there's tons of ways. A few that you can use if you want to keep track of these a little bit more. Something, again, just to help you identify, because it's not always as obvious as it may seem. Low putts, hitting a lot of greens, but yet having, only having 28 putts may, make you think that you putted really well, but it may just mean that you missed more greens, so you had a chance to have a lot more tap-ins than if you actually hit a lot of greens. There's a lot of different things there with stats, but again, another way to track your progress with the different stat trackers that are out there that are available. Lots of different ones. Some are obviously kind of gimmicky, as with a lot of different technology that's out there, but there are definitely some that are very worthwhile that can really help you hone in on what part of your game needs work, and help you track all that stuff. So the last little piece, with all that, the goal is to get better. Just a few, like I said, for my players, it's about, being able to sign to go play college golf, maybe winning a tournament, qualifying for the U.S. Junior Girls. For me, I had the opportunity to be on the Golf Channel. So for me, within my business, it just kind of said, when you work hard at stuff and you have a plan for what you're trying to do, you get better and you get more opportunities to do things. So talk a little bit about just really what those steps are for getting better, based off of creating that game plan and getting you there. Part of it is getting out of your comfort zone. I see this with a lot of girls here in the Carolinas. We have a great junior golf association between the Carolina Golf Association, the South Carolina Junior Golf, the Peggy Kurt Bell Tour, and the girls get a great environment. But sometimes I have to push them to get out of their comfort zone a little bit and play with different people or play different courses. You just got to kind of push yourself a little bit right outside of that. Same thing, if you're used to playing your home golf course all the time, is don't be afraid to go play somewhere that's hard, or play with people that you might not like, or people that are better than you. Maybe something from a mental side of things. That's one that it's hard to get a lot of players. I didn't want to work on my mental game, and ironically, it's what held me back in my golf career. And I didn't want to do it because it was out of my comfort zone to have to think about how I was thinking and how I was living my life and where my priorities were. I didn't want to do it. But when I look back, it was the piece that I was missing within my golf game. That and a little bit of the physical, just laziness of not, training and working hard and pushing myself had a lot to do with it. So clearly that was out of my comfort zone at that time, and I didn't want to work on it. But that's what you got to do. You got to practice your weaknesses, practice things that you don't like. I have girls that'll say, well, I don't like my 3-wood. So I'll ask them, well, how much do you hit it? Well, I don't hit it much because I don't like it. First thing is make sure that the club's fitted and it's not just totally out of whack for what your standards would be, but then practice with it. Even if it's easy to hit things you don't like. My favorite club was my 8-iron, and you could clearly see that my 8-iron had, so much more wear on it because I would, it'd be my go-to on the range, or, anytime I was practicing or anything like that, I'd love to bring out my 8-iron. This is my favorite club. But practice things you're not good at, practice out of bad lies. Just don't be afraid to do those things you don't really like to do, because the more you can kind of bring those weaknesses up just a little bit are going to help kind of close some of those gaps within your game and get you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And a couple more of some things that I definitely hear from the college coach side of things that I just think we all need to learn from is just learning to be coachable. It's one thing to kind of know what is good for you and know your game, and just really kind of know what does work for you, but also not being too stubborn and unwilling to change. This is a big thing the college coaches talk a lot about. It's crazy how much 14, 15, 16-year-old kids are already kind of stuck in their ways and not willing to change and be very coachable. And I know even as adults, we kind of get that way too, of just kind of thinking we know what's best. But just don't be afraid to, whether you do have a swing coach or whatever it might be that you're working towards, is just making sure you're coachable and you're willing to change those things if you say you have a goal for what you want to do. Another is listen and learn. Don't just listen. It's easy to take in what somebody says, but really learn what it is that you're being taught. Try to study and learn a little bit more about it, and not just take it in. Find out the whys behind what it is that you're doing or what it is you're being taught to do. So more than just listen, really try to learn it as well. These are just some examples of some good practice drills that kind of give you some out of your comfort zone. Giving yourself bad lies on the range, short games, setting up drills that have a goal that you have to complete before you leave. So something that puts a little pressure. You probably get hungry and it's time to go to dinner, and you just don't want to. You want to get done with that drill so that you can go eat, but you're not going to let yourself do it before you finish. The more varied, the better, as opposed to just the same putt over and over. Make it the same putt, around the circle so that you have different breaks. Target practice with wedges, switching up the distance, practicing different trajectories. You can call the shot and target and see how many in a row you can do. Just things like that put a little bit of pressure and a little bit of variability to what you do is a really great way to help increase your practice time. These are a few great tools and resources that I loved. Very, very simple. There's a ton of them. These were just kind of the first 5 that come to mind. Obviously, Orange Whip is a great tool to have. We're going to show you a little bit of ways to use it here in a little bit. Alon Golf has some great practice tools to be able to use just to make your practice a little more efficient. Same thing with the e-golf rings. I'm a big fan of Vision 54 and what they do from a mental. Again, they're big on the total game as well as like the whole life perspective on what they do. And then Home Depot and Lowe's, just being creative. You don't have to go spend money on a super expensive tool if you can figure out a way to make it yourself. So many things that you can go get at Home Depot and make work and be creative. Even just setting up tees or different things like that. So take advantage of the things that you have so that you can create a little more structure and quality to what you're doing every day. So just wrap it up a little bit to bring it back in, and then we're gonna take it over here to the range and show you a few things. But again, remember, set those outcome goals. I'm a believer in it's okay to have those big dreams so that you know what it is you're working towards. But you do have to break those down into a game plan of process goals that you're trying to do again every day. And whether it's setting it at the beginning of the week or setting it for a month schedule, just breaking it down into what it is you need to do in order to get better. It's easy and it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of I think Jim talked about it too, a lot of times of being around the right people who support what you're trying to do. I didn't have that for a long time, and it was as much my fault as anything, but I just tried to be a professional athlete, but around a lot of people who didn't understand that, and they didn't purposely mean to drag me down, but I just thought I could live life like a regular person, and they were getting up just to go to their job, and I needed to get up and practice and work out and travel and be healthy, and I just didn't, and it hurt my golf career. Now luckily I'm around a lot of supportive people with what I do with my business and training, and it just totally changes how my own discipline is, and just having people who want to bring you up with it and understand what you're doing. Again, track progress with your practice time. Keep track of what you're doing on the golf course. The more you can track what you're doing, the more it's measured, the better you're going to get. Big thing, one of my favorite quotes is definitely get out of your comfort zone. I didn't get out of my comfort zone for a lot of my life, and it held me back so much, and it's just something that I just see that is just so important to have to do in order to get better. Whatever it is that you want to do, you just got to get out there and start doing the things that you might not like to do, or that may not be as fun, or you may not be as good at, or whatever that might be. And then hopefully with that, if you do better, then you get better. And obviously that's kind of the goal of what we're going to talk about here is, how do you take it to that next level, whatever that may be. Again, I work mostly with the kids from a recruiting perspective, trying to help them get from high school or maybe even middle school through high school golf, junior golf, and then, on to college golf. And some even from there. I have a lot that come back, and some of what they learn from a recruiting perspective helps them when they go into job interviews and are doing those things later on in life that they've learned. So hopefully some of this gives you some good insight on, again, whatever area it is that you're looking to take to the next level. Again, a lot of this is so, general into a lot of different areas of life. But if you would like to get in touch with me, my email, website, and everything is here. And we are actually in the process of totally revamping my website. So check it out, but you're also going to see a whole new platform here in a few weeks that I'm really excited about. But there's my info, and then you'll see all my social media here at the very end. But we're going to take it to the range, I guess. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jim for right now and show you a few drills, and then we'll let you do some questions and answers.
Thank you, Brandi. So Brandi and I both live in the upstate of South Carolina, and we are just coming off of winter. And as you all know, if you deal with winter, your golf swing you're going to tighten up. You're not going to have your rhythm, your balance, your sequencing. So the Orange Whip was designed to really benefit a person to find that rhythm and that sequence again, and also stretch them out. So I'm going to have Brandi do a couple of repetitive motion swing drills, and she's going to start with what you talked about previously with the feet together. Now, the importance of the feet together is really to work on your balance and allow the swinging of the arms and upper body, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It really helps get your body in sync. It's so easy to get especially on the golf course. My dad always had me do this with a club, just to help get your body back in sync and your hips and your shoulders working together, and not trying to force too much, and trying to make your lower body not work with your upper body. And the Orange Whip just helps it, even more.
And what's great is she just starts out nice and easy, back and forth, finding that rhythm. And because of the weight of the Orange Whip, it's allowing her to find her sequence faster, because she can feel if it's out of balance, it's going to pull her into an awkward situation. So by repeating this, she's getting the arm swinging, the body rotating, and she's maintaining balance. And now she's getting into her normal width of a stance and allowing her full swing to develop. And as she gets comfortable, she can increase her pace and make a nice whoosh sound, so that she gets that athletic motion with all the energy going right toward her target. The beauty of the orange ball is she can feel like she's slinging that orange ball right to a target. And if you hear something in the background, we're very busy at Orange Whip, and we have a delivery at this very moment, so we'll try to stay on par with that. Now, Brandi has warmed up with the Orange Whip. She's got her sequence going, but because the weight and the flex is different than a golf club, I'm going to trade her, and I'm going to have her take the golf club and do basically the same drills, but with a golf club, so that it's more accurate to what she's going to do when she were to hit balls. So she starts slow, feet together, finding that sequence and allowing her body to rotate, but maintaining that nice balance. And by doing this every day before you practice, you turn it into a process. And Brandi spoke a lot of process. And that's great, because if you want to get better at something, you've got to do something on a regular basis. If you rarely take the time to do some of these drills, you're not going to achieve the levels you're looking for, because you need to do something to achieve something. So Brandi will go through does those swings so that she can find a very nice rhythm that she can bring to the golf course. Now let's switch over to the wedge. We have the Orange Whip wedge, and we're going to just show a few little swing motions you can do, because as we all know also, that short game is tough to bring back after a tough winter. So I'm going to have Brandi take this Orange Whip wedge, swing it back and forth, allow herself to feel the weight of that club head, because the Orange Whip shaft will really tell her when she's loading and unloading it. And as she gets it moving, you can hear it brush the grass. And when it brushes through, that means she's using the bounce to let the club bottom out. When she knows where that club's going to bottom out, it makes it so much easier when we put a golf ball there to allow the club to do the work it's designed to do. If you can trust where your bounce is, you've got room for error, and that club and the loft will take the ball in the air. You don't need to lift it in the air, and you don't need to stab down in it and hope you hit it. You just find that nice arc and let it brush the grass. And once you have that, it's just placing the ball there. Let's finish up with the putter. Now the Orange Whip putter, same Orange Whip shaft. It's going to teach you rhythm, sequencing, tempo. So first off, I'm just going to have her slowly swing that orange putter head back and forth, find a nice rhythm to it. And she's even letting that shaft load and unload. So many people think they're trying to keep the shaft perfectly stiff, but actually it has to flow. It has to load on the way back and through, as your golf clubs would do, but on a minimal level. Also with this orange whip putter, it has a round face. So think of one big ball hitting a little ball. You could almost relate it to playing pool. When she practices putting with this orange whip putter, if she's able to hit it in the center, the ball will go the direction of the putter that is swinging, the direction she's swinging that putter head. If she hits it on the side, it glances it off and the ball will roll right or left based on what side of the putter head you hit it on. So these are just some basic drills. Many people ask, well, how many should I do? As a golf professional, as a teacher, many of my students, I would provide them nice drills to practice before our next meeting. I'd see them the very next week. I'd say, did you get a chance to do those drills? And most would say, no, sorry, I did not. And they were still confused as to why they were not getting better. So if you want to get better, Brandi stated it perfectly in her presentation. Have a process, follow that process, track the process. That's probably the most important. Track it, write it down. If you're writing it down, you're focusing in, you're paying attention. And if you're willing to do all this, have those goals in a visible place also. The more you can see it and the more you can trust what you're attempting to do, the farther and faster you'll get to your goals and your dreams. So those are some nice setups. But now let's break down and see if we have any questions from any of the webinar followers today.
All right, thanks, Jim, and thanks, Brandi. This is Mandy from Orange Whip. I do the communications here, and I do have a few questions, but if you guys have any more questions, feel free to go ahead and send them in to us, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. The first one is for Brandi. When do colleges start recruiting?
Okay, the first question was for Brandi, and the question is, when do colleges start recruiting young players?
Well, it's like my two favorite words I like to say, which is it depends. And we actually talked about this at lunch. I mean, you get some that are identifying 7th and 8th graders early on into the process if they're that top ranked player. Typically, it's going to be, freshman, sophomore year, when coaches will start trying to do what they can to maybe reach out to that player within the rules or hope that that player's reached out to them. Plenty of recruiting still goes on junior, senior year, but those top ranked programs are really active as freshmen and sophomores are going through, and a lot of times have sophomores commit. Had probably a top 30 coach tell me she's already done with her 2020 recruiting, which is sophomores. So that tells you a little bit about how early it can start, but also don't like to scare everybody because still plenty of I've got some seniors who are actually still trying to figure out the process, and lots of juniors still going through the process.
Well, that's good to hear because I consider myself a late bloomer. So, I'd still like to be confident that as a late bloomer, a player can his junior, senior year or her junior, senior year still have a chance to play. So don't give up hope if you haven't been recruited by 9th grade, because you know what, a lot of you will bloom later and you're gonna play some great golf. So stick with it. And as Brandi said, there's many ways that you can approach this, and she could help you find that destination.
All right, and the next question is actually for Brandi as well. How much does distance play a factor in recruitment, and how important is distance in getting you to the next level?
Okay, the question is, how important is distance in regards to getting recruited, or how important is distance hitting the golf ball and playing on high levels of golf and in tournaments and that? Is distance the only factor or the main factor, or what is your opinion on the distance issue?
From a recruiting perspective, it's a factor. I would say I actually asked a lot of the college coaches this, how important is distance off the tee or even with irons. And a lot of them will say that it is something they consider. I mean, we're definitely talking about a sport that is becoming very athletic, and it's becoming a lot about how far can you hit it. I mean, it makes the game a lot easier when you have a wedge in your hand instead of a 5-iron. You can't take that factor out. But if your short game's terrible, or from a recruiting perspective, if you don't have the good character or the grades or whatever it might be, that then definitely doesn't become the only factor. It's definitely something that it's hard to compare apples to apples when you've got a player who does hit it short, and you're afraid that especially when you're taking it to the next level, that typically means courses are longer, courses are tougher. So a lot of times it's just how strong is your short game, how strong is your ability to get the ball up and down, or are you really good with your hybrids and your long irons. One of the players that I had, she's at Auburn and has had a great career at Auburn, and she was one of the shortest hitters, and it was a question, and yet she's had no problem transitioning, but she's continued to try to get a little stronger and get the most out of her body that she can. So it's something that gets considered, but it's definitely not something that keeps you from being able to go to the next level. There's just some kind of variables in there as to just where do you compensate for that. And like I said, from a recruiting perspective, a lot of that is more about the character of that player. If that might negate the fact that you might can bomb it off the tee.
Those are great points, because I remember in college we had a couple of kids on our team who could hit it a mile, but they could also hit it a mile offline, and we'd have trouble finding their ball. And we had other guys who would just hit it right down the middle every time, and they'd get it up and down, and they were our scorers. They were the guys we counted each week. A lot of the other guys, their score wouldn't count for that event. So don't give up if you don't hit it a mile. And there's ways to train. Actually, an Orange Whip will help you with your distance, but keep in mind that the short game is really where it all happens. And the people who make it onto the big leagues, they really do great with short game. Another quick point I'd like to discuss is with college recruiting, education or grades. Is that a pretty big factor, as well as other activities? Are coaches looking for kids who play either other sports or involved in other activities at school?
They do. They definitely like to see well-rounded kids. The academics play different parts in terms of wanting to go to better academic schools or possibly needing scholarship and needing the academic money, because golf's different than a lot of other sports where it's not a guaranteed full ride. On the boys' side, there's only 4.5 scholarships at the D1 level, and there's 6 for girls, but that's not enough for the entire team. So obviously they're split up. So if you're really looking at scholarship side of things, being able to close that gap with academic money is huge. And the coaches just want to know, they don't want kids that are going to have a hard time keeping up. I mean, the travel gets tougher than what you had in high school. The demands are harder. So if you have a hard time in high school, they're going to assume that you're going to have an even tougher time in college. It definitely makes a big difference. And while we're obviously getting into the day of specializing in one sport, is really tough to be a 2-sport athlete. I was lucky to have been a 3-sport athlete through most of high school, and then 2 sports through majority of high school. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. But now it's so much about travel ball and what you're doing that got a couple girls who are having a hard time with soccer and softball and trying to give it up. But they do love athletes. So you try to stick with that as long as you can, because coaches definitely like to see that it hasn't been just all about golf, and from a physical standpoint and just from an exposure standpoint that you've done other things, volunteer work, church activities, whatever that might do as well. They definitely like to see that you've got a good balance.
That's great.
All right, Jim, this one's for you. What size Orange Whip would you recommend for a junior golfer?
Okay, the question is, what size Orange Whip would I recommend for a junior player? We have multiple sizes of the Orange Whip, and I will start with our junior version. We have one that we call the Orange Whip Junior. It's lighter, it's shorter, and it's got a smaller grip to accommodate a younger player. Now, we generally tell people from 7 to 12 years old, but it kind of depends on how big or strong the kid is to be able to handle that Orange Whip. So 7 years old, and maybe, I guess I don't even know a great height to give you for that, but 4.5 feet tall. I think a 4.5 foot tall kid can handle the junior Orange Whip very easily. But let's say you have a kid who blooms real quickly, and at 11, 12 years old, they're 5'8" and strong. I would then actually move them towards the Orange Whip midsize, which will be more similar to their body type and their ability. Now, as these kids get older, once they reach high school, some of them are full-grown people. They're tall, they're strong. At that point, they could use the Orange Whip Trainer, the full-size one, which for me or Brandi would be more like a driver, and the midsize is more like a long iron for us. So it all depends on the ability and the let's say the height of this junior player. But we have some players. I have a fine player. She's in her 40s, but she's a great player that I've worked with. She's about 5 foot tall, not very big, and I give her the junior Orange Whip because it seems to fit her the best. So we have a variety of Orange Whips to choose from, and you can check out our website, orangewhipgolf.com, and we'll be able to explain a little bit better there. But it has to do a bit with the height and the ability.
All right, great. Let me get one last one. I think we have one last time for one last question. If we didn't get to your questions, we will still get back to you. We'll email you with an answer. This last question is for Brandi. What do you do in workouts, and what do you suggest for starting workouts seriously?
So the question is what does Brandi do for workouts, and what does she suggest for workouts for players to get to that next level?
Well, I'm lucky that I've got a great gym that I go to. Is guys that I trained through my golf career at Night Performance Factory here in Greenville, South Carolina, and they've done an awesome job with some golfers and just a great job from a general training perspective. I would definitely say, learning to train like an athlete was in a safe environment. That's one of the things that a lot of juniors struggle with when they go to college golf is they've never had that experience and they get hurt. And a lot of times the trainers at the college golf level sometimes are the softball or the football trainer that's trying to train golfers. So knowing what is good for you, again, is a really good thing. The TPI certified trainers out there are great. That's not what it's all about necessarily. I know some great trainers who don't necessarily know it that specific to golf, but they know the golf swing and they know the golf body and they know how to train athletes to just be, overall a little bit stronger. And for me, I feel like a lot of the workout side of it is as much a mental thing that it creates as it is anything, both with the kids and myself. It just creates that confidence and that mentality that you're getting, not even that you're just getting stronger physically, but that you're making yourself kind of get through those workouts and do those things. So I think that's as much as anything. But there's a lot of different options there for trainers and gyms and one-on-one training. There's online programs. The biggest thing is just get moving and doing something and doing it in a safe environment to make sure you don't hurt yourself. But just getting your body moving and being an athlete. I think a lot of people forget that golfers are athletes, and trying to get yourself to be an athlete and just the discipline and everything that takes.
And I got to believe feeling better, feeling stronger, and feeling more feeling more coordinated would gain in your confidence quite a lot.
Yep.
Let me ask you this: if a player that you're consulting and they live, I don't know, let's say Nebraska, how would you direct them to find a fitness support system that you had?
That's part of kind of the consulting part, is trying to find if there is somebody in the area. The guys that I train with do remote training actually. So sometimes I've got a handful of girls who go to their own gym, but they'll send them through an assessment and then give them the workouts that they would need. So that is options. There's some different ones as far as options for that for golf if there wasn't somebody in the area. But usually the goal is go into, you can go to the TPI certification website and it'll tell you if there's a TPI certified. Like I said, that's a first step. But sometimes just doing some homework and some research around who else have they trained, what's their success with other athletes. And you can definitely find some different ways. Like I said, there's online training. If you're okay going into the gym and have a little bit of an awareness of what to do, you can easily do it on your own as well.
Okay, great. Well, you know what, folks, that was a great 45-minute webinar we had today. A lot of good information. Please, as Mandy stated, we can answer any of your questions in the future if you email or call them in, and we'll be glad to answer those. But thank you for your time today, Brandi.
Yes,
great to have you. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very beneficial for us. So thank you, Brandi, and that's been a great episode.
All right, thank you guys for joining us today. As you can see, we have some of our contact information here. If you need to get in contact with us, we have our email address, our phone number. We will be sending out a recording tomorrow as well as a survey. So you will get to see a recording of this, and we would love to hear your thoughts through the survey. Also, we would love to for you to follow us at Orange Whip Golf and also Brandi Jackson Golf. You can follow all of us on social media to see what's going on with us and just keep up to date with what's going on. We would love for you to join us at our next webinar. So if you follow us on social media, that would be a great place to find out when we will be holding our next one. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks.